Without further ado, it is time for the neuroscience of our three brains, presented by Brian Gorman and interviewed by Tim Kincaid, and I will turn it over to you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Vito. And it is my pleasure to, work today, actually be the interviewer, we call it that, but it's more conversation with my wonderful friend and colleague, Brian Gorman. Brian did a workshop that I think was at the conference that was outstanding and provocative, and I learned a lot. I think many of us did, and it was something that was worth exploring a little farther. And so when I was talking to Brian, it was like, well, we don't know how many people actually went to the conference who actually went to that session will be on the call or not. So he has the really easy task of finding that sweet spot of giving us a quick overview, an overview refresher on the content of the three brains, without boring you guys who remember it from the conference, but also adding some new material that we didn't hear at the conference, just to keep it interesting for us. And then, so he's going to be doing that, and then there'll be that won't take too long. Then he'll give a little bit of time for questions, if you have any questions. And then he's going to work with, I think, Doug. Is that right? To do
because we've lost both Doug and Shane, who was my backup.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they went offline to talk. Well, one of them is going to get the gift of coaching with Brian.
Well, one on the call and one later.
Right. Okay. Both are going to get the gift of coaching, but one's going to be brave here and do it with an audience. And so as we get closer to that time, and so he'll do a coaching on a real topic, and then afterward be able to ask a few more questions or give observations, and that would probably take most of our time together today. So Brian, why don't you take it away?
Okay. Can we all see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're not familiar with Zoom, you probably now have a film strip along the side of your screen. You can click the line icon to collapse that virtually entirely, and you can also slide it, click on it and slide it out of the way. For those of you who were in the workshop at the conference, I'm just going to go over some of the fundamentals about the three brains as a refresher and as a foundation for those who don't know the neuroscience of the three brains. And then we'll move into an actual coaching session where I will be using my three brains and working with my clients' three brains. So first of all, what do we mean by brain? It has motor neurons, it has sensory neurons, it has ganglia, it collects data, analyzes data, stores data, retrieves data, all of that electrochemical stuff that we hear about with dopamine and et cetera, in the brain we think of in our head occurs in the other two brains as well. We have three of them. The first is the one that we typically think of. It's the cephalic brain, the one that's up in our head. There is also a cardiac brain, and I'm going to come back and talk more about each of these. And finally, there is a gut or enteric brain. So the brain in our head is by far the biggest. It has about 86 billion neurons. The prefrontal cortex, which is sort of right behind your forehead, if you will, that area of the brain solves complex problems. It's where we experience empathy and find creative solutions to things. The amygdala, which is in the limbic area of the brain, is sometimes referred to as the reptilian brain, and it's the oldest part of the brain. It's where fight, flight, freeze, appease rests. The brain in our head is best at cognitive perception, at thinking, and at making meaning of things at its highest expression. And by that I mean when it's working in collaboration with the cardiac, the heart brain, and the gut brain. It is the power of creativity. It's the seat of creativity. The cardiac brain is the smallest. It's between 40 and 120,000 neurons. Its primary functions are around emoting, relational, affect, and values. It's where our values reside. It's the seat of compassion and the seat of passion. And the enteric brain has 500 million neurons. That means it's about the same power as a cat's brain. It actually is found from the esophagus through the stomach, the intestines, the colon, and the bowel. So it's far-reaching. It communicates with, among other parts of the body, the pancreas, the lungs, the diaphragm, and the liver. Primary functions for the enteric brain are mobilization, self-preservation, and it's where our core identity resides. It's when you get in touch with who I am, that's where that sits. The highest expression of the enteric brain is courage. The three brains communicate, and what's interesting is they communicate through the vagus nerve, and the way that nerve is constructed, about 90% of the fibers are constructed for upward communication. So when we listen to our heart, when our gut is telling us something, that's real, that's happening. And that's communication coming up from our heart, from our gut to our heads. So at some level, we've known this for a long time. Whether you look at Rumi, Buddha, various religious works, they talk about where your heart lies. They talk about gut instincts in different ways. But and I'm going to ask you to come off mute, because we've also known this before we had neuroscience. Things like, his heart's not in it. The taste of fear. I'd just like to open up the microphones and shout out some of those different head, heart, brain sayings that you have been saying that you hear other people saying all the time. Anyone?
My gut says it doesn't feel right.
My gut, yep. More.
He's all heart.
He's all heart.
My heart's gonna break.
My heart's gonna break, yeah.
I've got butterflies in my stomach.
Butterflies in my stomach.
I felt my heart drop.
Felt my heart drop. We probably all know a tight ass, right? And I don't just mean sexually, but somebody who is just so tight about protecting themselves. That's the enteric brain.
I've got a sinking feeling in my stomach.
I got a sinking feeling in my stomach. So this knowledge, if you will, of the three brains has been with us a long time. And now neuroscience is making it real. I've found that knowing that very useful, particularly when talking with business clients who just want to, you know, I just want to keep this logical. I just want to keep this rational. You know, they're all up in their heads. If you're working with a businessman or a businesswoman who has to make some big changes in the business, they're also going to have to make some big changes in themselves. And that's not all going to happen up in the head. So that's really the background of this. And I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Tim for any questions before we get into the coaching.
Thanks, Brian. Are there any questions? Anybody have any thoughts or questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question. So when you were talking about the head brain, whatever that one's called, I'm not good with the fancy names. You talked about the prefrontal cortex and the reptilian brain. You didn't mention the mammalian, whatever it's called, the emotional.
There's a lot more there. Yes,
Right.
there's a lot more there. I don't want to get into all of it, but for me, those two are the most critical. And they're the most critical because of how they're triggered. The prefrontal cortex, which is where we get into problem solving and empathy and creative thinking, is triggered in 1/10 of a second. The fight, flight, freeze, appease is triggered 3/100ths of a second faster. So for me, that's important because it's important to know from the front end that however I'm approaching my client, I'm not triggering their defense mechanisms. And you'll see some of how I do that when we get started.
Great question.
Brian, this is Harry. How do you trigger courage?
You'll see.
Okay, thank
And
you.
then we'll come back. We'll come back and talk
Okay,
about
thank you.
Anyone else? Looks to me like it's time to coach, huh?
And Doug needs to finish his lunch. So just as background and in total transparency, Doug, Will Fisher, and I were put together as a triad when we were going through the first ever gay coaches training up at Easton Mountain 3 years ago. We continued to meet every 2 weeks. I have probably, in looking at my coaching log, I have coached Doug about 40 times now. So I know Doug pretty well, and Doug knows me as a coach pretty well. Because one never knows what's going to happen, I had Shane as a backup in case Doug, for any reason, was unable to make it today. I've never coached Shane before, so you'll see some of the knowledge of Doug coming through my coaching, but I do this coaching with first-time coaching clients as well. So while we're doing the coaching, I ask everybody to mute and turn off your cameras so that Doug and I can have just one another on the screen. And then we'll come back and take questions. Got a few more cameras still on. There we go. And
Excuse me.
bless you, Doug. Bless you. So I've got a timer here, Doug. I'm going to
Okay.
take us for approximately 20 minutes.
Okay.
I know you've had a busy day. So what I'd like to do is start by just getting us all together.
Sounds good.
I'd invite you to close your eyes and plant your feet firmly on the ground. And match your breaths in and out. 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out. And when you're ready, come on back. So Doug, first of all, what do we have to celebrate today?
Oh, I just finished this incredible design installation project, and it's quite a wow. It's probably one of my best garden designs I've ever done. It's
Beautiful.
Yeah, and it's still a work in progress because there's more work being done on the property, and we'll be changing some other of the existing beds soon. So, and it's nice to have a client who says, do it, and doesn't ask for what the cost is.
Great, thank you. So celebrate, celebrate. We've got about 20 minutes, plus or minus.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most important use of this time for you?
I really need to jumpstart my coaching and at the same time figure a method of, actually, I guess it's jumpstart my coaching, but figure a way of melding that into what I'm doing. I'm not ready to totally give up what I do. I could see downsizing a little bit, but I'm having probably one of my best financial and creative years. So I feel like I'm sort of at the top, and I'm not really ready to just jump off and say, I'm going to coach now.
Okay. So jumpstart the coaching. At the end of this session, what do you want to have as a takeaway?
I would like to have a maybe not the complete roadmap, but maybe some signs or at least some directions to jumpstarting the coaching and melding it into what I'm doing for work already. I mean, as part of the things I do to generate income.
Okay. Okay. You're in the middle of one of your busiest and most successful, most creative sessions ever. Why now with jumpstarting the coaching?
It's just been sort of lagging for a couple of years, and every time I'm involved with anything with coaching, I feel like I get on fire. I'm driven. And I love that with some of the design stuff and the garden stuff I'm doing, but it just feels like this is where I'm supposed to go. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Okay, Doug, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes again and actually put your hand on your chest. and think about what it will be like to have that blend of coaching and landscaping gardening. Think about what it will be like when you have that successfully melded together. Just breathe into that in your heart. And what does that feel like?
It feels really good. It feels right. It feels it feels full. It feels whole. God, I'm really at a loss for words.
The heart doesn't have words.
It glows. You know, it's warm. Yeah, that's.
So again, Doug, if you eyes and let that glow, that warmth flow up into your head. And feel it up there as well as in your heart.
So the image I get is like one of those like star projection units where all the lights popping out, or you know, like if you had a colander over the top of a light and the lights are popping out all over, and they're like, my brain says no, but I don't want it like that. I want it to just be this big, huge, bright light. I don't want all these little streams of light popping out. That's the visual that kind of comes to me when I'm thinking about this.
And how does it feel now as you think about it?
Oh, it feels like, it just feels very disjointed for the little lights popping out instead of this like nice big glow. And how does that feel? It doesn't feel right. It feels.
Okay, so knowing you, that almost sounds like life now.
Yeah, all the little lights popping out. Yes, that's my life.
Yeah. And what you're wanting to do is bring them all together.
Mm-hmm.
So don't lose that glow in your heart. What might you do to start bringing those lights together?
Right now, in this moment, I feel clueless.
Okay. Can you name any of those lights?
Oh, there's family and grandchildren and elder care, and there's gardening and staffing and cooking and friends and meetings and play. Like this dim little light coming out is play.
And the gym?
Oh, and the gym, yeah, the gym is kind of getting to be stronger again because I actually got there today for the first time in a week again.
So a while ago, Doug, you found a common theme in what you're doing.
Oh, it was a creative, lots of creativity. I mean, the creativity was like the underlying thing. And I think it's one of the reasons I like that I feel driven to the coaching is that like it's never the same. I mean, I've always had jobs that changed. I never went to an office. It was always something different. And that's always something that's been very, that's something that's fed me. I mean, if I had to go to an office every day, 8 hours a day, I would not have lived this long.
So we're looking for how to creatively
Mm-hmm.
bring these two lights together.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in terms of skills, I just met with a potential new client, and I used at the end of I used the classic, at the end of our session, a consultation, like what would mean that you had a valuable consultation? And I got this text back, "You're so professional." I was like, well, yeah, this is what I do for a living. I kind of know, but yeah, it's like I have integrated a lot of the skills that I have learned as a coach. When I'm, clients say they want this, and they're showing me kind of a picture, and it's nothing to do with the picture. It has to do about how they feel and how that sense and the place makes them be. And so I have brought that piece of my coaching into working and designing with clients. So in that way, it's integrated that way. I'm not sure how the gardening is going to integrate into the coaching, but I would like to just be doing more coaching.
So
The question.
the gardening is seasonal.
Very seasonal.
What can you do now to lay the groundwork for doing more coaching as the season winds down?
Well, this is a paradigm that I'm just not very knowledgeable and or comfortable in. I have worked in a number of different fields, all of them ultimately creative, and I have never had to advertise, I've never marketed, I've never had to sell myself, because after doing one or two projects, word of mouth has gotten to the point where I can actually be pretty selective about who I work with, which is wonderful. But so this is a whole new realm of, so it feels like right now needs to be laying groundwork for the fall and the winter, and I'm not even sure what that completely looks like. I mean, one of the things I know we have talked about that I have not done is to talk to the local art association and offer a vision board class. One of the other things that I'm thinking of doing is talking to the garden club and asking to do a pilot on doing a vision board of how you want to be and who you want to be in your garden, as a way of, I mean, I don't know, I don't feel like the gardening and the coaching is necessarily going to morph together, but this is more about getting skills and working in terms of doing workshops. So those are two, but the Art Association is having a big fundraiser at the end of the month, so it's not even worth to try and talk to them. That's their focus right now. So in July, to contact them.
I'll let you write that down.
But I would need to sit down and write a proposal for the garden club, and see if the horticulture committee would support it, and then it needs to get advertised.
So Doug, as you're writing that down, I'm going to invite you to reconsider the fact that you've never done sales and marketing. You don't do it as a salesman. You do it by demonstrating the value that you can bring.
Mm-hmm.
The two workshops that you mentioned are one way of doing that. What other venues might you offer?
Well, I did do one at the local library, and what I realized is I had two people who were interested, and coaching just wasn't in their financial means. So there are centers in parts of Connecticut that have those kinds of, the people who go to those centers, whether they're senior centers or libraries, have the resources potentially. So that the more upscale, communities is where I need to be marketing, not locally.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the vision board piece is something I'm very comfortable with doing. So,
And I'm going to draw on, again, my knowledge of that work with you, because you said you had a very successful vision board experience with a couple as they were preparing for their marriage.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that after lots of years of doing events and weddings, it's a really tough market, and I'm not sure how, it's a niche within a niche, because the people who are interested in having, this is going to sound horrible, but it's sort of the reality, are having a meaningful wedding that has to do with their heart and soul and not with one-upmanships and putting on a big production, seems very small.
Okay. Okay. So you've got some ideas here now, and we've got about 5 minutes left. So what I'd like to do is ask you again to close your ideas, think about the workshops as a venue for marketing your coaching, your interactions with your gardening, landscaping clients as a venue for practicing your coaching, and take those thoughts and reconnect again with your heart.
It feels like, I can't think of the name of it, those big floodlights that you see, like, that go back and forth over the signs for like the opening of the Oscars and all of those. Like, there's a name for that light, but I can't. Instead of like these little pin lights, it feels like it's this big spotlight that's moving around.
Okay, now move that feeling down into your gut. And connect with the feeling down there. You may even want to rest your hand on your gut.
It feels a little queasy and
okay. And what's
it's not the lunch I just ate either. So.
And what is the queasiness?
Fear of the unknown. Yeah, I think it's more. It's like that. It's just a fear that I don't know where it's coming from, but this piece that's saying, well, just turn the fear into curiosity instead of, an end result. Just like, okay, so how can you just move this from being like paralyzed with fear to, I'm wondering what that would be like, sort of a curiosity, a shift.
What do we need to do to make that happen?
I think probably, what do we need to do to make that happen? I think breathing and staying grounded and, I have two, this may sound horrible, it's egocentric, but I have two testimonials that I asked a young new film guy to splice together. Might mean just like watching that periodically. I mean, they're really like very amazing and extremely complimentary about what both these two people, very different individuals, got out of their experience of being coached by me. To remind myself that, yes, I am a good coach. Actually, I'm an excellent coach.
And I can vouch for that too.
So, yeah, I think maybe that should just be, I mean, the old saying, you shouldn't read your own press releases, but it's not, it might be helpful in this just to periodically visit that, just to remind myself that, yes, I have made a difference with several people with my coaching.
And as you're saying that, how does that feel?
A little awkward to say it, knowing there's like this cast of 20 people or so that are listening to me talk about myself like that. A little self-conscious. But for the most part, I didn't even know they were there for most of this session. So, yeah, I think listening to my testimonial every once in a while, like maybe once a week or something, would be beneficial for me to remind myself of my skill level. And be a good way to shift that fear into curiosity. Yes, I have signposts.
You have signposts. When?
You want the timetable. The infamous timetable. I just fear into curiosity. All right, today is, I am going to write by Monday. Monday, I will write the proposal for the garden club. So whatever date Monday is. And I will check in and let you know that. And let's see, the benefits the end of June. So I go to New York this 7th. So by the 12th of July, I will have a proposal. It may not no, I'll just go. I'll have made contact with the Art Association, and I will also have submitted to whomever it should be to get onto their late fall winter calendar and what I need to do that.
Okay.
So that means I have to have the proposal written. I need to make contact with them. I already have one board member, one former board member who know my work and know me, who I can use as references. So that's a good thing. So it just is probably showing up not in my gardening duds, but something somewhat professional looking, and talking to find out who it is I need to speak to around their programming.
Okay, and then you had also talked about identifying other communities that you might do.
So I will, by July 1st, I will come up with a list of potential spaces or potential places to do vision boards. I'm writing this down. Wow, I got a shitload of work to do. Well, you know, it takes action to get these things to happen. Fairy dust doesn't work too bad.
So if I can invite you as we wrap up then to just once again connect head, heart, and gut with some 6-second in, 6-second out breathing. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Come on back, everyone.
Can we come back?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on mute.
Nice. So Doug, what was that like?
My curiosity is why 6 seconds, because there's a part of my brain that goes that way sometimes. It was really very beneficial. I mean, there's an advantage. I do know Brian, and we have worked together. So that level of trust is already there. But even if I think I had met him for the first time, he's got a very affable affect there. That's really great. Like, he's just very real and very safe feeling, and very clear. So as a coach, I would find the process interesting. You know, if I was just Joe businessman, I'm kind of a artsy fartsy woo-woo guy, so this isn't strange to me. But yeah.
Now, to build on that a little bit, you notice I began the 6 seconds, and I can't give you the scientific reason, Doug, but it's sort of the professional guidance that I've gotten in terms of the even breathing in out 6 seconds brings the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems into alignment, and in turn brings the 3 brains into alignment, which allows them to reach their highest function.
Okay, that makes lots of sense. Thanks.
The other thing I wanted to say is, once we did that, where did I go? Something to celebrate.
Yep.
So before I did anything that might trigger some fear or some protectionism or something else, I moved him into that positive psychology space, if you will. And we begin all of our coaching sessions with celebrations now.
Yeah.
And so Brian, when you do that, when you start with a celebration, and you call it that, sounds like, what have you noticed is different?
When we talk about something to celebrate, it's not, you know, I got a 98 on my spelling bee today. It's not just an intellectual thing. So again, beginning to connect people with emotion, but with positive emotion, as a way of laying the foundation for, you know, we can deal with some really tough stuff.
Yeah.
In this process, but we don't want to come at it from a perspective of the world sucks and I've had a fucked up day and now I'm going to try to fix things.
So how was that for you, Brian?
Good. I, you know, like hopefully everyone on this call, I just find great joy in coaching. And I also, I'm older than you, Tim, find great joy in sharing what I've learned along the way with others so that they can benefit from my learning. So this was a great combination of both.
Well, it seemed, and I'm sure it was, very natural for you. Now, Doug didn't tell you what he was bringing, so this was not acting. I mean, this was the real deal. He was bringing you an actual something.
Yeah.
And it looked like you know, sort of seamlessly slipped into going there. and, getting the coaching going and framing it up and just kind of, letting him know about time and, the agenda comes from the client, all those good things. What was going on in the background? How did you decide when to jump in, or where to jump in, rather?
If I want a client, or not if I want a client, if a client wants to make a significant change, they need to be connected to the passion around that change. And so virtually always, I start with the heart.
Oh.
And you'll see I came back to the heart before I went to the gut, because now I'm getting all intellectual. The gut isn't going to make intellectual happen. So I went back to the heart. And then to the gut. Harry had asked, how do you help people find courage? I wouldn't say that it was courage necessarily that got Doug to find a way around that fear, but there was something around his self-identity and his passion to find a way to bring more coaching into his life that, like, I don't know where you came up with it, Doug, and you probably don't either, said, if I can turn that fear into curious, I'm fine. But that came from his gut.
So both fear and curious was a gut thing.
Yeah. Part of who Doug is, remember, the gut is the core identity. Part of who Doug is a curious guy.
In oh so many ways.
Anybody have a question or observation about for Brian or Doug, either one?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is just a fascinating theory, and I would like to read more about it and just see where it could be very applicable to my work. Where could I find more?
So the two best resources that I've found to date, there's a book called Conversational Intelligence. Your author is Judith Glaser, Glaser. I was fortunate enough to actually train with her a couple of years ago. And then I released a video on one of her models that she worked with me on to make sure I got it right last fall. And unfortunately, last fall, she also, actually within a week after she approved my video, she died of pancreatic cancer. But W. Beck's actually has been authorized. She knew that she had stage 4 cancer and was putting things in place for her work to continue. So W. Beck's now actually offers that training on her behalf. The other book is Braining, Braining, doing cool stuff with our multiple brains. And that's actually two gentlemen, I believe, out of Australia who have drawn extensively from neuroscience research to provide some guidance on how to do this. And again, I know they actually do training, offer training programs as well. I have not done that.
And there's a rumor going on that there might be something happening in the future with the GCA about the brains.
Just rumor at this point. Just rumor.
So is there, you talked about the vagus nerve is bottom to top direction. When you're coaching, you were moving, you started with his heart, then you moved to the gut and then to his head. And is that the order that you find?
I moved from his heart to his head, back to his heart to his gut.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
It depends. So if you're going to play around with this, follow your gut. It depends. It depends. If Doug began with, I'm really afraid, I've got this nagging fear that the bottom's going to fall out of my landscaping business, I may have started with the heart and moved to the gut first.
So
to connect with his fear, but then to work with finding the courage to experiment with some new things. Then we can move back to the heart, because he's got the heart for the landscaping, and up here to start figuring out what those creative new things are. So it really depends on what the particular intention is. And I follow my gut. But like I said, I pretty much always start with the heart.
Brian, what I'm hearing is maybe that you always, wherever you go next, you then come back to the heart. So you go gut to heart, head to heart, you always come back. So you don't go head to gut or vice versa. Okay. The other question I had was at the end.
Because again, Doug had all these ideas up here, but they're just like ideas up here. Bring them down here, so he's passionate about them, and now he'll work on finding the courage to make them happen.
Okay. And then at the end, you do the 6-second breathing in and out, and I'm curious as the reason as why you're doing that when that's closing the session.
Well, otherwise I'm going to leave him somewhere. I'm going to leave him up in his head again. I'm going to leave him in his heart again. And again, that really brings head, heart, gut into alignment. So he's walking off feeling whole.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
anybody else?
Brian, here's a quick question. I know that when you say gut, it has a lot of different layers and different levels to it. And I know that proprioception, meaning how we unfold and uncover what part of our bodies are telling us. When you work with somebody and their gut, do you try to unfold either where is the pain, where is the stress, where is the feeling state that is located in the body? Do you work with it directly in that kind of, I guess, proprioceptive way that says, what does the body want to say right now? How would you express that, either with movement or with words?
I do. I'm usually doing more than 20 minutes.
Right, that's true.
So I do that. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Well, I saw that you did that. I mean, you only had 20 minutes to do that. What might be different if you did it for 40 minutes or, a good deal longer? What would you have stayed in that sort of space like that and just kind of?
It probably wouldn't have been as visible, if you will, in terms of the framework.
Yeah.
I would have spent more time exploring different options with him. Maybe when we got back to the heart, which you talked about these 5 possibilities now, Doug, which of these really do you feel passionate about? So we would have spent more time in each of the areas probably.
And how transparent are you with your clients? I mean, do you actually talk them through this and explain to them, or you just do it and it's
depends on the client.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it will be just like this. Sometimes I'll begin. I really do try to center and align. I really do try to begin in that positive space of celebration. But just then move into an intention, particularly some business clients who are let's just keep this real. Let's keep it factual.
Yeah.
I might ease into it differently. But what I found is when I do tell them the science, they're much more accepting of going into the heart, into the gut.
And is it something you use or draw on with every coaching session, or do you use it selectively?
I wouldn't say every, but at some level, most.
Yeah.
At some level, most.
Brian, you asked, I know that you phrased this as the story and the 3 brains. So does each part, the head, gut, and heart, have different stories? And are those stories trying to be woven together? Or do you allow them to stay, in some senses, separate? So that there is a heart story that wants its own fulfillment and a brain story that wants its fulfillment, or a gut story that wants its own kind of fulfillment.
The whole focus time of aligning them is because they're most powerful when they're working together.
Okay.
I actually have one client who has Asperger's, who has gotten into giving voice to his head, heart, and gut. And I don't know if it has anything to do with the Asperger's, but he has this ability to vocalize what's in his heart and what's in his gut. And he'll have a conversation with himself. And sometimes he'll say, head, be quiet. This is for heart and gut to work out. The important thing is, if this is an issue around values, passion, compassion, go with your heart. Don't go with your gut. That's not what your gut is best at. So for me, that's part of the value of this is knowing when people are listening to the wrong brain.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Well, I would just like to say it's really interesting and fascinating, and certainly a lot to think about. The questions have been great too. I like what you just said about the don't let your gut figure out the heart issue. And also from my theater, from an actor point of view, you know, being in your head all the time is one of the worst things that you can do, because it can be very limiting. And but yeah, this was very interesting, really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, any tips you would give to people, to us, or anyone who would want to incorporate this you know, type of way of working into their coaching practice?
Get familiar with your own head, heart, and gut. Start learning to connect to it. Because you're not going to be very effective in guiding a client to hear their gut if you're not very good at it yourself. So that's where I'd start. I would definitely start with some study somehow, somewhere. Also, just think about what you already know. Look at how you intuitively coach your clients, and chances are you're going to find some of this already in there. You know, you read when your clients light up like Doug did. You may not have connected that with the cardiac brain, but you read that there's some passion around certain things. So don't shy away from it. Explore it.
Great, thank you.
Harry just texted me that the 3 treads on the Enneagram are head, heart, and gut. Absolutely. And Shane, I'm going to email you a link so that you get your session in. Thank you for standing by as backup.
Thank you. Look forward to it.